Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I am joined by Loren Rowney. Loren, hello.
Hello, everyone. If you watched the race, I'm sure you did yesterday. 2 days ago probably. It's actually sunny today in Belgium.
Yeah, I want to get into that.
It's so typical.
We talked about how the weather was not going to be a factor in my preview, but we'll get to it. Gracie, hello, welcome.
Hello, guys. And apologies for all the listeners, just in case my audio is not so good today. I'm camping, but I'm still excited to talk about women's cycling.
Oh my
Yay.
gosh, her bars have gone from red to yellow, so I think we're okay, Gracie.
Okay, let's have our fingers crossed.
We have 2 listener questions, and we're going to I'm going to put one at the end because we're going to talk about Paris-Roubaix later on. I'm also going to slot one into the middle. So we've got no listener questions to start the episode today because they're kind of within the racing. So let's just dive right into it. Before we talk about Flanders, I want to talk really quickly about Tour of Flanders because it's not a World Tour race, but it's a midweek classic that's really exciting. And you guys didn't watch it yet, but you're going to watch it. But I want to talk about it, so I'm going to talk to myself about it because it was like action-packed. It was like action from start to finish. It was so exciting, and there were some really interesting things that happened in it. There was a really interesting break with FDJ, DSM, and Cecily Uttrup Ludwig. It was Brawley and Berto from FDJ, and the 3 of them were like not working together at all, which was super fascinating to watch. And then there was like a Rusa Voss move that joined them. And then there was like a bunch of weird tactics from Trek Segafredo where they had Elisa Lange-Borghini and Shirin Van Anrooy up there, but they couldn't really figure out who to work for because Elisa's been sick, which we'll talk about when we talk about Flanders. And so there was some super interesting tactics going on. So if anybody didn't watch Tour of Flanders and you're listening to this podcast, I highly recommend that you go back and watch the replay because it was such an exciting race, and it ended up with Demi Vollering going solo for 9.7 kilometers and winning. And then in the sprint for second, Chiara Consoni, who won last year, got second, and Voss was third, 38 seconds behind Vollering. So I guess if you didn't watch it, I've now ruined the result for you, but the build up to the result was very exciting, so highly recommend.
And it's kind of like seen as the dress rehearsal for Flanders too. So it's always like, even though I didn't watch it this year, I always loved the race now as a commentator, but as a rider, because it was like everyone's just coming into their peak Flanders form. But there's also a bit of conservativeness there too, because you don't want to crash or you don't want to be overdoing it coming into Flanders. So it's always a really interesting race.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about what happened at Flanders, but in terms of like Demi Vollering winning solo for almost 10 kilometers, and then she wasn't at the pointy end of Flanders until that group reformed. So I thought that was super interesting. But I mean, she still had a really strong ride, as we will talk about. So that was Dwars. There's not really a ton to talk about since I'm talking to myself, but highly recommend. It was a good one. All right, Flanders. Flanders happened over the weekend. We don't have Tilda here, and I cannot do the Tilda wrap up, but I'll try. So, Ali Wollesen of AG Insurance Quickstep was solo for a really long time. It was a super impressive ride from her, the young Kiwi on that team. Annemiek van Vleuten crashed with 48 kilometers to go, which was a pivotal moment in the race because right after that, the Koppenberg happened. And on the Koppenberg, it was chaos. We'll definitely talk about that. It ended up with Marlon Russa and Silvio Persico riding just the 2 of them for a minute, but they were caught by Kopecky and Lorena Wiebes. So SD Worx had 3 against Silvia Persico from UAE Team ADQ. Lorena Wiebes and Marlon Russa got dropped on the climbs afterwards. So it was only Kopecky and Silvia Persico. And then Kopecky put the hammer down, to quote Cecile Uttrup Ludwig, who was a controversial figure over the week that I don't think we're going to talk about. Talk about that. She rode solo to the line, and behind there was a group of 7 that sprinted for second. I'm not as good as Tilda. I try.
That was a
just
decent
so,
rundown. I know, and she's also got that beautiful British accent.
Yeah, the accent, like the way she speaks, like she's so very calm and like, yeah.
But I think starting probably with the Koppenberg is a good place, right? So, or before then, because Annemiek van Vluten's crash was sort of the first series of unfortunate events, I would say, for what ended up being the outcome. And I actually just turned on the coverage once that group of 4 had gone away. And I was like, what the?
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
As much as I like, it was an interesting dynamic. And I said in our group chat that maybe Sylvia Persico would pull a Stannard and beat the 3 SD Worx riders. Like, maybe that was a possibility. But yeah, if you turned on the coverage after the Koppenberg, it was just like, all right, well, we went into this race thinking SD Worx is going to dominate, and that was what you turned on the coverage to. But yeah, I think we should let's start with Annemiek's crash, because we went into this race not really knowing Annemiek's form. She's had some bad luck, not really had the legs so far this year, but she went away to altitude, and I think we all expected her to come back and be the Annemiek of the last couple years, where she's just dominant and no one can really come close to her. But she crashed with 28K to go. It wasn't the fault of anyone else. It looked like she crashed on her own accord, and it was not a smooth crash. Like, she got hit from behind by another rider after she went down, so she definitely would be feeling that this morning. But it was just such an inopportune time for her to crash before the Koppenberg that after she went down, we never saw her again until she finished 3 minutes behind the rest of 3 minutes behind the winner. So almost 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, not a great day for Annemiek, for the world champion.
You know, and we've seen her get caught out in tricky situations like this before and catch back on, and then actually sometimes go on to win the race. But what happened on the Koppenberg just impacted 4/5 of the peloton or more. It actually contributed to the whole outcome of the race, in my opinion. Like, you had to be in good position, of course, at that point. But I think all those riders who got stuck walking up the Koppenberg, she probably was just coming back onto the back. So there's no way, even with her incredible strength, she would have ever gotten back to the front of the race. So I actually knew a journalist who was on the Koppenberg, and she said that she was trying to walk up there and she was slipping. So she didn't even end up walking all the way to the top that way. She had to go a different way. So it was really bad. It sounded
like it rained in between when the men came through and the women came through.
Yeah.
So the cobbles were really, really wet and slick. And maybe if they'd been racing up it a little bit faster with some momentum, then the outcome wouldn't have been the same. But I mean, if anybody has tried to ride their bike or walk over wet cobbles, it is very unpleasant. So
it's like ice.
Yeah.
It was just hard to tell. It looked to me like maybe it was Lippert that had kind of slipped first. But like, I think so many riders were just on that point of failure kind of all at the same time. And it was only Rusa and Persico that, I think they're literally the only 2 riders in the whole peloton that rode clean over it. So it was just like dominoes. And yeah, I didn't realize that it had rained because like all the cobbled sectors looked muddy anyway, just from the week's rain beforehand. And yeah, it was so anticipated last year, and it didn't quite have that impact of what we were thinking it might, but this year it sure did.
Yeah, and it was cold on top of that. So it was like cold, rain, and mud from the week. And so it just kind of all culminated in what was a pretty unfortunate ride up the Koppenberg for the entire peloton, -2. But yeah, so as Gracie said, over the top of the Koppenberg, it was only Rusa and Persico on their bikes. And then behind them, the next 2 riders were Lotte Kopecky and Lorena Wiebes, who were just fastest at running up the Koppenberg and jumping back on their bikes. And so when the race went over the top of the Koppenberg, it was 4 riders out front, 3 of which are SD Worx, and the race was over at that point.
Yep, pretty much. And then, I mean, you could see like the footage of all the riders sort of coming over the Koppenberg in bits and pieces. And it was just basically, if you were in the first, I would say 15, 20 riders, then you still had a chance to kind of make that second group and potentially make the race. But the thing is, if Lotte Kopecky gets a gap as well, under those circumstances with a rider like Rusa with her, it's always going to be very hard to bring that sort of combination back, and not to mention that they had Wiebes as well. For Persico, it was great. She actually could get a free ride. And I was so hoping that she would have ended up on the podium in the end, but that's kind of how it all panned out. And that's bike racing as well. But there's this part of me that's like, no, but that's not how Flanders, the outcome's meant to happen. Like, yeah.
The situation with Persico, when Lorena Wiebes was dropped on the next climb, and then it was just the three, and Russo was doing a lot of the work on the front, which made total sense. But I was like yelling at the TV. I was like, Persico, do not work. Do not work. Sit on the back. Conserve as much energy as you can, because I just saw it coming. I saw the Kopecky move that dropped Persico, and she said after the race that she didn't want to go to the line with Persico because she's such a strong rider. And so she,
fast.
the only way that she knew that she could win is to go solo, and she did. And yeah, I mean, she's only the second rider in women's Flanders to win it, to double up on wins back to back. The first was Miriam Melchers, like way in the beginning, way early on in Flanders. I had it pulled up.
In commentary, Bridie and I were just thinking, you know, what is going to happen with that duo of Kopecky and Persico. But you could just see Kopecky was head and shoulders above pretty much everyone else. And I was like, 100% she's going to try and go solo to the finish, because that's such a sweet way to win. And she could do it. And that's exactly what she did. So somewhat boring in some ways, but at least the strongest rider won on the day. Maybe Annemiek could have had a good day if it wasn't for that bad luck. But, you know, it's also a classic. Like, you have to manage the crashes and not crashing. So Annemiek was taking more risks. It wasn't the only time that she was trying to move up on a gutter, on a path, or where she had that crash. So it was bad luck, but it was also a bad decision. And I think Kopecky was just on a super day. Her teammates were all on really good days too, and they really did a great job as a team. But yeah, big hats off to Persico. I don't think she really made any mistakes. She did pull some turns, but I think she only did it when it was appropriate, where she thought, actually, this is in my favour in these odds. So I think she did sit on when it was a bigger group, and she did ride a little bit when it was just the two of them, which I think is actually fine and not a bad thing.
It was always going to be a case of whether she could go with Kopecky up the Quermont, right? And she
exactly
knew it. Yeah. And then also, I was saying to my partner, it's a numbers game, and we know that Persico is a really fast finisher. But if she could hang on with Kopecky and then, you know, carry that to the finish, you're going to roll in for second place, which at Flanders is a huge thing. But obviously that's not how it ended up because of Group 2.
Yeah, Group 2. We should talk about behind the group of four that formed after the Koppenberg. There was a chasing group that had multiple Trek Segafredo riders in there. There was 3 in there with Shirin, Elise Longa-Borghini, and Lucinda Brand. There was Anna Henderson, Juliette Lebeau of DSM, Kasia Niwodoma of Canyon, Arlena Sierra, Vollering, and Elise Shabby. So there was a pretty big group that formed, and they didn't ever... There was a lot of attacks that flew from that group, and it broke apart on the climbs leading towards the finish. So there was only 7 that finished together, or I guess 6, because Shirin finished a little bit behind that group, but they never were able to form a chase. And that's something that we've seen a ton this year, is just that Group 2 is not working well together. And especially with Trek having 3 and Canyon having 2 in there, you think it maybe would have gone a little bit different, but that is not the case. That's not what happened. So it was an interesting situation with Group 2, and they ended up with sprinting to the finish, it was Vollering who took second, so SD Worx with another 1-2. And Elisa Longoborghini took third, which I really want to talk about Elisa because she's coming back from having COVID, and she was vocal on her Instagram, but that she was very, very sick when she had it and did not know how her form was going to be. And she looked all right at Dwars. She just kept getting dropped and coming back and getting dropped and coming back and getting dropped and coming back. And the same exact thing happened at Flanders, but she was able to sprint for third, which is
it's incredible.
It really, really, I mean, in that group, like, she outsprinted Sylvia Persico, who's got a good kick. Kasia Niodoma took fifth, and Juliette Lebu was sixth, with Rusa finishing up that group. So it was an interesting dynamic. And do you think if they'd organized, they could have brought Kopecky back? Or do you think once Kopecky went, it was just...
I swear, it felt there was a moment before, and Gracie will know the name of the climb before the Quermont, which is a key climb, and that's where Van der Poel attacked in the men's race, and actually that created the, where
before the Quermont, the
Tyenberg. Elisa put in a monster turn, and the time was dropping down, and I was thinking, okay, maybe she's thinking Shirin is going to launch and Shirin is feeling good, or the Tyenberg is a really good launch pad before the Quermont. And at one moment I was like, maybe someone will bridge across or get close, but it was just like at that moment, and then it just didn't happen.
Yeah, I think you make a good point, Abby, in that, like, would they have caught Kopecky anyway? But I think probably not. All in all, Kopecky was on an amazing day, but I think when that group kind of got whittled down near the end, after the Kreuzberg Hotonde, there was 2 SD Worx riders in Rusa and Vollering, and there was 2 track riders, Elisa Longoborghini and Shirin, and then there was one of every other of those favourites. And that is the problem, is that those riders that are one out, and we've seen it time and time again, they refuse to work because they go, it's your responsibility. And because Elisa Longoborghini fully committed, she was racing for Shirin and she was doing an amazing job. She buried herself quite a few times in the race. She was working super hard on the front, and it's almost like setting a false tempo. It wasn't a false tempo in the way that we would use that tactically by riding slow on purpose. She was riding as hard as she could, but she wasn't riding as fast as Kopecky was riding. But everyone else was happy to let her stay on the front because of that high pace that she was setting. But it wasn't enough to be able to catch those 2 riders and ultimately one rider. And everyone else was just waiting, and they've lost the race. And of course, it's a gamble to do that, and you don't want to be wasting your chips, especially when there's 2 riders from 2 teams there, particularly the 2 SD Worx riders. But you're going to lose the race anyway, so why not try? And it just is so frustrating to see, especially Kasia, like, she puts in these attacks and it almost is like she never fully commits to the attack, but also then she just never rides either. You've got to talk. They should have talked to Shirin. They should have said, we will all work if both of you Trek riders also work. And at least then you're taking out one extra fresher rider from that equation. Of course, you have to deal with the 2 SD Worx riders. There's really no way around that. But just get everyone else to work and just talk to each other.
Do you think, Gracie, it's also, particularly with Flanders, the fear of the final 2 climbs, that combination?
That's definitely, that's a really good point, Loren. I think maybe in another race you might have seen them have a better chance of talking or working together, because there is so much fear and apprehension around the Odd Quermont in particular, but certainly that combo of the Odd Quermont and the Paderberg, and that was always such a sticking point for me. Like, I had to really have a lot of self-talk going into that final climb of, like, making myself be near the front, because you want to be conservative. You're, like, needing to save every scrap of that last energy in those watts, and because it climbs on the concrete before you even hit the cobbles, you're just, like, trying everything to not, like, go into the red before you even hit the cobbles, and certainly really loath to ride in a group beforehand. So I can definitely understand why they were not riding, but ultimately they'd already lost the race.
Yeah, and we saw the classic thing where the single riders that didn't have teammates were throwing attacks, but that just slows down whatever chase is happening. And so it really doesn't, I mean, it's like tactics 101. And we also saw Rusa doing a really, really good job of getting up into the chase and disrupting any chase that was formed. So I mean, SD Worx went into this race as the favorites and they absolutely delivered. I feel like there's been times in the past where they go in as the favorites and they go in with this many riders to win and they fall apart. And this was not one of those times. They came out 1-2, although there was still some potentially awkward tension at the finish with Vollering and Kopecky. Vollering seemed pretty stoked to get second, though, when she crossed the line.
Well, Hannes, my partner, he was like, "Did she think she won?" And I'm like, "No,
no, it definitely looked. It definitely looked like a little sus. Like,
but yeah, I mean, we can go into that if you want. But for me, that said something. Like normally, what happens is the whole team comes together, and I don't know. We switched off the coverage after I think about 5 minutes after the race. But I didn't see any footage of the team group up from SD Worx, which I thought was a little odd.
Yeah, I wonder if this is like a little bit of a crack in SD Worx that we will maybe lead to more exciting racing to come, because this wasn't my favorite edition of Flanders, although there was some really exciting moments. But I think the dominance of SD Worx at the moment is, I don't know. I don't love it. Like, I hate to say it. Yeah. They keep finishing 1-2, and yeah, Trek has finished 1-2 in one race, and we've had a couple other winners win other races, but the big races of the year, it's been an SD Worx, just SD Worx dominance. And with the riders that they have at the moment and the way Kopecky is riding going into Paris-Roubaix, I mean, it just looks like it's going to be another repeat. Like, can anyone beat Kopecky going into Roubaix next week? It's like, or this week, I guess, end of this week. Like, she's raced 5 races this year, and she's won 3 of them. And one of them she finished second by a hair to her teammate. So it's just, yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, the biggest question going into Roubaix is who and how can SD Worx be beaten? That doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I think that they've definitely had a good run, and some teams just haven't had a good run with injury and illness. So they are dominating, but I think it's the luck is in their favour currently. So it'll be interesting going forward. I don't think that they'll be able to have that as much success in the tours, maybe. But yeah, they're certainly on a good roll at the moment. But Roubaix, it definitely includes a bit more good luck and bad luck, doesn't it?
Exactly.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah, I think before we talk about Roubaix really quick, we had a listener question from Chris Young. What's up, Chris? Who asked, would Canyon Storm Racing have done a better job if they'd kept Elise, Micah van der Doen, and Cassia together rather than sending Elise up the road early? And she was up the road for a little bit. She was before the Koppenberg, she was in a bit of a break that came back together, but I don't think that really made any difference. Like, maybe actually it would have been better if they sent her up the road and she'd succeeded in getting away, and that would have completely changed the dynamic if there'd been a group up the front or off the front already when Rusa and Persico came over the top of the Koppenberg first. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we have talked so much about Canyon SRAM and how they just can't quite put it together that I don't even know, like, if we have anything more to say about that team and how they're riding and what their tactics are. I do really like Micah van der Doen. Like, I'm so excited for her in other races in Paris-Roubaix. Like, she's such an exciting rider, and I think she's a huge addition to that team. Yeah, Kasia was really emotional after the race, actually, in her interview. made me tear up a bit because she was so disappointed. But it's just the same old, same old. I feel like for me, the more interesting thing is Trek Segafredo because they're in this super weird spot where they're just like really, really low on riders and really low on powerful riders. And for them, it's like, I mean, they're going into Paris-Roubaix with last year's winner, with the defending champion, who I don't know if she can, I don't think she can win it again. Like, she was incredibly strong at Flanders, especially given that she was sick, but it's just such a different, it's such a beast of its own, Paris-Roubaix. But if Trek Segafredo is going to win again, like, how can they possibly pull that off? It would be,
I think as well with the women is like, this will be the third edition of Paris-Roubaix, so people are still learning how to race that race. And like Gracie pointed out, it is a hell of a lot of luck there. And thankfully, it's going to be a dry Roubaix. It's looking like it's going to be dry all week. So in terms of the hecticness of rain, which it makes me cringe because it's just awful to watch people crash like that. That element will be gone. But teams are still figuring out how to race it. And I feel like it's a very hard race now to pick a winner. And even though Kopecky, I would say, yes, she's the strongest rider for the moment, there are a ton of riders that are in good form and given the right opportunity at the right moment, you know, like Arusa as well, as a time trialist. It's just if you get that gap and you're technically very good, you know, and you've got numbers from your teammates in the back, which can disturb any sort of chase. I don't think you can really chase in Roubaix as well as other races collectively. It's kind of just a race of attrition in the end. But yeah, for me, it's the hardest race to pick a winner.
I feel like that's why Kopecky's going to win, though, is because she has Rusa. Like, she's riding so well right now, and the two of them together are the most terrifying duo going into Roubaix. Like, yeah, I feel like it's going to be super interesting because, like, honestly, one of the riders that I would like to see win Roubaix is Van Vleuten. But I don't know if she's, the way that she races her.
Is she racing Roubaix?
I don't even know, but it's her final year, so I wouldn't be surprised to see her on the start list. We're recording this on Monday, so the start list obviously isn't out yet. But I really wouldn't be surprised to see her race her final Roubaix, kind of like a retaliation for the first Roubaix where she crashed really hard.
Which is maybe a reason not to race it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I could go either way, I think, because she's got so many big ambitions for maybe some of the Ardennes Classics and then definitely the Giro and the Tour.
Maybe. And the Vuelta is coming up really soon. The Vuelta is early. They moved the Vuelta to earlier in the year. So if she's going for the triple again, the triple quote Grand Tours, then like a month away, I think. So it's not enough time to break a bone at Roubaix and come back. Well, it is Van Vleuten.
Yeah, don't say that.
She'll just race with the broken bone. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be really interesting. Like Gracie said, there's a ton of teams that are super strong, and going into Roubaix, maybe their luck will just change because there's been, I mean, FDJ Suez has a really strong team, and they had a lot of crashes, and they've had a lot of injuries so far this year. Same with Trek Segafredo. I mean, Team DSM is riding really, really well. They'll have some good prospects for the race. For me, I picked her for Flanders, and it was mostly like a heart pick because I wanted to prove Ellen Van Dijk wrong. And it didn't work out. I picked Vos. Maybe not a great call for Flanders, but I think she's a good call for Paris-Roubaix. Like, she looks super good, and she looked really good in Dwars, and she's just building her form over and over. So I think when it comes to Roubaix, like, maybe we'll see a Vos victory finally.
Well, it's a race she hasn't won. So
Yeah, I don't think anyone would begrudge her a win at Roubaix. add that to the trophy room. She can have it. She's allowed that.
Yeah, speaking of trophies, in the tally of Wheel Talk podcast picks for races, it's 0 to everybody but Gracie. Gracie got the winner this time.
I'm so glad that Gracie.
I kind of cheated though. I don't think I was really allowed the first pick. I just took it.
No, it's whoever can, it's whoever can jump into the chat fastest and answer.
Well, hey, I got second. Matt and I got second.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And I feel like I have 1/4 of a point for Get Wevelgem. Before we dive into a little bit more of the specifics of Paris-Roubaix, are we missing anything from Flanders? I think we pretty much covered it.
I think so.
Yeah. All right, Paris-Roubaix. So they changed the course slightly this year. No more. We still don't have the Arenberg, but they did add about 20 kilometers, so it's almost 150K this year, which is last year was I think 124, the year before 115. So they're just kind of slowly building up, and this year it's 145.5. So it'll be interesting, but it's more all in the front end. They basically just added a longer loop to the front, and so the final, I don't know, 100K or whatever are the same that we've seen the last 2 years with all 17 cobbled sectors. And there's not a ton that we can kind of chat about without a start list, but I think I'm really excited. I'm really excited for Roubaix. Maybe we should reconvene later in the week and do like a 20-minute Paris-Roubaix preview show.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Maybe Thursday or Friday.
Yeah, sounds fun to me.
I'm so tempted to go this year because I know as well, like it's so beautiful outside today. It's freaking cold, but it's really beautiful weather, and I'm like, I want to go. I really want to go, but like I want to take Harry as well. So just need to figure out logistically. Fun. Yeah,
I got to go when it was a sunny year, and I went to a friend's barbecue on like sector. Who knows what? I can't remember what sector it was anymore. It was like 13 or something. It was great. Definitely recommend it.
Yeah,
this is a race.
You see the riders for like a second.
Yeah, but it's like, but this race is so exciting that I feel like this is one of the races. And also it's like the time of year when we're coming out of the winter and it's springtime and it's beautiful and you're like so excited to see the sun that if there was any race that I would travel to, and I'm firmly like I would rather watch bike racing on TV person, it's this race.
Flanders is pretty special too. I mean, last night on Belgium News, I swear they just spoke about Flanders the whole night. It was just, people were still there partying on the Quermont at like 8 o'clock in the evening. And Hannes was like, why don't they move it to Saturday? Because then people would really probably stay out till 5 a.m. the next day.
Yeah.
It's just today is a Monday. So
there'd be riots if it was a Saturday.
Yeah.
Those tents are no joke. Like they literally set them up like 3 weeks ago. They're just, it's amazing. I love it. I was getting goosebumps because that, like you guys know, it's just like a wall of noise. It's so cool.
You know what, Gracie? You're going to have to come back to Belgium with Kimbers and then we'll all go as spectators to Flanders.
Yeah, and do the sportive and like
fully fangirl.
Walk up the Koppenberg. Did you see? Oh, no, I do have one more talking point about Flanders. Did you guys see the podium girl or the podium getters, not the podium girls, being offered Fritz McMayo at the end, and they're all like, "Oh no, thank you." Oh,
really?
It was funny. Yeah, some person, I don't know who it was, a journalist or a media person, was like,
and they said no.
And Lotta was like, no thanks. And Elisa had like this like face that she was getting offered pineapple on pizza. It was so good.
Oh my God.
That's hilarious.
And
that
I would have been like,
tradition.
Yes, please.
That was tradition after the race.
I saw a picture of Kasia posted a picture in the Canyon SRAM bus after the race that Taylor Phinney, her partner, brought them all.
Oh, that's nice. I saw Christine Majoris as well. She was like, She did a video to the rice and then to the fries and then reached for the fries, and she for sure would have eaten them.
Yeah. Good job.
When
Good
in
call.
Flanders.
Heck yeah. They're the best Fritz I've ever tasted. Always after Flanders. And then you go get more the next day.
I'll change my rule about only watching bike races on TV to go to Flanders with you guys
and then stay.
Fritz.
And then you love shopping in Belgium. So actually it's perfect, Abby.
I do. Belgium has such good fashion. Like I never would have known it until I went to Worlds 2 years ago or whatever. Oh,
Ghent is my favorite city, I have to say.
Yeah, it is a cool city.
I do
like
Bruges is pretty
cool.
good too.
Bruges is nice for a day trip. It is, you know, and you can indulge then like in all the typical, like you have to eat the fries, you have to eat the waffle, you have to buy a box of chocolates, and you've got to drink beer, and then it's like you basically ticked the list.
It's a good list though.
Yeah.
All right, so our other question for the podcast was from Jace, and he asked for our Paris-Roubaix picks. But I think we're going to save that, and we're going to do a mini preview show that'll be on the Wheel Talk feed later in the week, and we'll pick our Paris-Roubaix picks when there's a start list. Although maybe we'll have to rock, paper, scissors for who picks first, because whoever picks Kopecky is going to have an advantage. Maybe we just take her out of the running. Like we're not allowed to pick Kopecky. It's like when I can't remember when we picked like the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift last year. You weren't allowed to pick Van Vleuten.
Wiebes? Oh no, Wiebes for the win. No, it was Van Vleuten.
There's only one piece of news that happened over the week that's worth talking about, really, and that's the fact that the women's tour is canceled for 2023. They were having some trouble financially already and had basically done a call to action to raise money for the race, and they were unsuccessful. So we will not see the women's tour in 2023, but they are hoping to come back in the future. So we'll see. I think the state of cycling in the UK is pretty dire at the moment. So this is kind of just adding on to teams collapsing and that. So in that sense, it's a bummer to see, but yeah, we still have another World Tour race in the UK, and that's Ride London, and we will be more excited about that if there is live coverage this year. So, all right, let's wrap it up. Gracie, what are you obsessed with this week?
Oh, I'm just reading a lot at the moment, and it's so nice. I've always loved reading. But a friend of mine gave me like a huge bag of books recently, and she has great taste and they're all good. And I've just been plowing through them. They're like a mix of great new fiction, old stuff, lots of biographies. And I just read a really good biography. It's definitely not to everyone's taste, so I'm not going to recommend it to everyone, but it was called Priest Daddy by Patricia Lockwood. And it was just so beautifully written. And for me, watching cycling has always been so inspiring, and you just want to be as fit as those people, you want to be as strong as them, but nowadays I just know I'll never get to there again, and that's totally okay. And so now I'm getting really inspired because I love to write and I love to read good writing, and it's just like watching good athletes. I'm just so inspired by good writing at the moment, so that's what I'm obsessed with.
Okay, that's really hard to beat.
No, mine's also a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also love to read. And one of my favorite authors who wrote this book, The Priory of the Orange Tree, that came out a couple years ago, she wrote a prequel to that called A Day of Fallen Night. And it's so good. It's like high fantasy with dragons and magic. And
what's the author's name? This is like a book club now.
The author's name is Samantha Shannon.
Oh.
She also wrote I think she's British at least. She wrote a series called The Bone Season. That's quite good as well. But yeah, this book just came out 10 days ago or something. And it's so good. I'm like a third of the way into it, and the writing is just amazing. I mean, it's so rich that it's almost hard to take it in, but her storytelling is just incredible. I mean, the book is like 900 pages or more, so it's it's a brick. But if Gracie, if you like fantasy, I highly recommend reading.
Yeah, I don't mind a bit of fantasy, so I'll definitely take you up on that. And you'll be happy to know that I've been watching Shadow and Bone as you recommended.
It's so good. Oh, it's so good.
I kind of forgot what had happened in season 1, so I'm like, my brain's like doing the slow catch up, but it is good.
Yeah, and apparently they're going to have a spin-off of just the Six of Crows characters, which was my favorite books from that world. So I'm pretty excited if that actually happens.
Oh, so you read the series first?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I read all 8. There's 3 series. There's the trio of books, that's the Shadow and Bone books that came out first, and then so there's 3 of those, and then there's 2 Six of Crows books, and then there's 2 that are around the Nikolai Lantsov character, and I read all of those before the show because I wanted to beat it. You know how like sometimes books are just so much better, and if you've seen the show, it just really ruins
Maybe
the books.
I'll
and
read
I
the
didn't want
books
that to
then.
happen.
Maybe I read the books. I don't know. Instead.
I think the show is just as good as the books.
Okay.
In some ways better.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie. And also the show, like the writer of the books is involved in the show, the writing of the show. So I feel like whenever that happens, it's going to be a more successful transition than when they just like, you know, the Rings of Power.
Mm-hmm.
Terrible. So bad. Sorry. Loren, what are you obsessed with?
I don't know if I'm obsessed, and I won't then choose a book, but I also do like to read. I'll just go with Working Moms on Netflix because, yeah, they're short little episodes and you can squeeze them in every now and then.
Oh, how good is a short episode? Everything's like an hour.
I know. It's like a marathon.
It's like watching a movie.
Yeah, Thompson and I have been trying to watch the Drive to Survive, the new season of Drive to Survive, and the episodes are so long.
Yep.
I wonder how they're gonna do the cycling one. I guess it's supposed to come out in June. So
Just
we'll
before
see
the
how
tour. Mm.
I can't say I'm excited for it, but that's because I hate Drive to Survive.
Oh, controversial.
But it's so annoying. Like they jump around so much from race to race that there's like no cohesive storyline when it comes to the actual season of racing.
Yep.
And like something about all of the quotes that they use, I don't know if every single person in Formula One just sucks, but that's like how it seems.
They want
There's
us
only
to...
like 2 likable people.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a pretty weird world, that's for sure.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah, sorry about my controversial takes. But we will be back later this week to preview Paris-Roubaix. It's such a huge race. I'm so excited for it. I think it deserves its own mini episode. So we will be back. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you to you two for being here with me. And yeah, thanks to the listeners.
I will seriously, I'm going to look at the weather again because this is what I do and see what the weather's like on Saturday and see if Hannes is up for a drive. I think it's only about an hour. I don't know.
Yeah, do it. It's fun if it's good weather.